Bold predictions, version 12. We got 5 more here tonight. The only rules are you have to make these predictions and you have to claim that you would bet your own money on these. First up, something that's near and dear to my heart. So when I said feelings could get hurt tonight, I included me in that hypothetical. Arkansas, Hunter leads us off. Arkansas will finish 10-2 or better. I put this at an 8 on the boldness scale, which automatically would draw a response from a lot of Arkansas fans. I thought you thought we were going to be good this year. Oh, I do. But this is college football, so it's all about schedule. And I ask you, if I were the worst enemy of Arkansas and someone gave me schedule-making ability, what would I do any different than the actual schedule they have made for themselves? It's total and complete brutality. It's like if I were to smash 1,000 glass bottles on concrete and then take your shoes from you and say, here, walk to me. That is Arkansas' schedule. You know they play in the SEC West. I don't even need to tell you they play Bama or LSU or Ole Miss or Texas A&M. You know they've got all that already. That's hard enough. But then they just decided to bring Cincinnati in town. They decided to go to Provo, Utah to play Brigham Young. They got Liberty coming in there. Producer Jesse, a.k.a. Stats and Info, gave me this little tidbit. Their out-of-conference opponents combined to go 39-13 last year. Here's how brutal their schedule is. They avoid the top 4 teams in the eyes of Vegas in the SEC East, and I still think they may play the toughest schedule in the Southeastern Conference when you consider the out-of-conference slate. So I don't know how we're going to confidently say that they're winning 10 games or more. There is certainly a path here, but a lot of things have to go right. I'm just talking about health-related issues. A lot of things have to go right. Their over-under win total is 7. And so I asked an odds-making buddy earlier today. I texted him and said, if I were to put them in the ACC, what's their over-under win total? He speculated either 9 or 9.5. Don't change a thing about the team. Just put them in another Power 5 conference. That's how much different their perception would be nationally. And so, man, they got it to do. They got it to do. I will tell you this. Everything, well, not everything. That's a lie. A lot hinges on that Cincinnati game in Week 1. Because I think everyone's looking at that game and they're saying, ooh, that's a good test, but no one's predicting Cincinnati to win the game. They lost 9 guys to the NFL draft. They are coming off a banner year for the program. They're going to Fayetteville Week 1. No way they win that game. It'll be a good, hard-fought game, but they won't win that game. Got to win that one if you're Arkansas. I mean, look at the stretch there. They got A&M and Alabama back-to-back. And then there's that road game in Starkville on the 8th. Look at what it's sandwiched between. It's between games back-to-back against maybe the 2 most physical teams outside of Georgia, 2 of the most physical teams in the conference this year, in A&M and Bama, and then they go to Brigham Young. There's no bye in between this. It's all back-to-back to back-to-back. So 10-2 is going to be tough there. I gave that an 8 on the boldness scale. Next up, now this one's interesting. This one made us dig a little bit today. Austin said there will be a Power 5 conference champion that is currently at 8.5 wins or less in the over-under betting market. And he's from Lexington, Kentucky. I wonder who he's talking about, by the way. On first glance, how wild does this sound to you? The Vegas numbers for over-under win totals, he is telling us, Austin's telling us, there's going to be a team whose over-under win total is 8.5 or less that's going to win a conference title. That sounds pretty wild, right? Well, I got something wild for you. Wildest stat of the night, courtesy of Stats and Info, a.k.a. producer Jesse. Take every Power 5 conference title game last year. Of the 10 teams that played for a conference championship, 7 of them had a preseason over-under win total of 8.5 or less. It gets better. 4 of the 5 conference champion winners had preseason win totals of 8.5 or less. It happened all over the place last year. It was nearly a clean sweep. The only one, what was Alabama in the SEC, the only one that had a preseason win total of over 8.5 that actually won a conference was Alabama. So, is that the norm? Because then producer Jesse tells me, hey, don't get used to it though. Because the year before, it was nothing like that. Nothing like that at all. So, in the ACC, that's where I want to look first. Because if we're going to get a Power 5 conference champ that has a preseason win total of 8.5 or less, the ACC by far gives you your best shot. Because there's only one ACC team that even has a preseason win total of over 8.5 wins, and that's Clemson. If you're watching on YouTube right now, we're showing you. There's this log jam in the 8.5 to 9 range. Pitt, Miami, Wake Forest, and NC State all have over-under win totals of 8.5. And then you got North Carolina at 7.5. So if it's not Clemson, then we hit right here, because automatically, doesn't matter who it is, we would hit. But also, if you look in the Big 12, a team like Baylor, who won the Big 12 last year, Baylor does not have a win total over 8.5. So Baylor could easily be in the running here. There are options, but I think by far my eyes go to Baylor and my eyes go to the entirety of the ACC, because if Clemson does not come through, if Clemson does not rebound and reassert themselves in dominant ACC fashion, it will be the ACC. Next up, this one would be a long shot. I put a very, very high boldness rating on this. The last one was 5, by the way. I said that was a 5 on the boldness scale. Adam said A&M's going to struggle, barely even become bowl eligible. This is a 9.5 on the boldness scale. This is just borderline out of the realm of possibility at this point. Having the kind of raw talent that A&M does not guarantee you a national title or a conference title or anything like that. But unless you are a complete moron, it does guarantee you that you will not have disaster seasons. You cannot be as talented as they are and as deep as they are and be missing out on bowl game. That just doesn't happen. That's not real world. So we're clearly predicting in this tweet, A&M's a 6-win team. He said you barely make a bowl. So I'm saying that means A&M goes 6-6, right? What has to happen there? Well, last year they lost their quarterback and still went 8-4. So this year I got that quarterback and I got another one in Max Johnson. So I got 2 viable quarterbacks. I got a better overall team. I've upgraded almost everywhere offensively. I'm loaded defensively. My lines of scrimmage look really good, and I'm supposed to be dropping 2 games here somehow. I don't see that, but if I were to just entertain the idea, here's how I'm going to split the schedule. They play Miami in week 3, and they got Arkansas and Dallas the next week, and then they go to Bama a couple of weeks after that. Even if they lose 2 out of those games, if they lose 1 of Miami and Arkansas and they lose to Bama, they're already a 2-loss team. They still have to lose 4 more games out of South Carolina, Ole Miss, Florida, Auburn, and LSU. I just don't see that. And also, Ole Miss, Florida, and LSU are at home. I don't see that. And so they certainly will be favored in most of these games. I think it's a disaster-proof roster. Could they drop 4 games or 3 games? Could they be 8-4, 9-3? Absolutely. 9-3, I don't think would be a terrible year for them. But 6-6, I absolutely don't see that happening. Next up, we're going back to the Power 5 conference level here. This one's good too. Sammy said for the second time ever, we will have 5 different outright Power 5 conference champs than we did the year before. Watching from Houston, Texas, or Bristow, Oklahoma, depending on when the show airs. Just to be safe, we're going to shout out both towns. Every Power 5 conference having a different champion than the previous year. How realistic is this? Well, I'm looking and I immediately have my eyes go to the SEC, because the SEC is probably your biggest hurdle here. Bama won the SEC. I know this comes as a surprise to some people, because you remember Georgia winning the national title. They did fall to Bama. So we're technically talking about conference champions here. Bama was the SEC champion last year. They are the current odds-on favorite to win the conference again this year. So Bama could ruin this all before we even look past the SEC. But if Georgia were to be there, or if Bama gets upset by A&M or Ole Miss or someone in the West, if the SEC is able to produce a different champion, then we're in business. Because Pitt won the ACC last year. They are not the favorite to win the conference this year. So Clemson or any of a number of the other teams that we talked about a little while ago, they could easily give you a different ACC champion. In the Big Ten, Michigan won it last year. Certainly Ohio State is the overwhelming favorite to win that conference this year. If not the Buckeyes, you've got Wisconsin, you've got Penn State. So there are a number of viable candidates that could knock off Michigan. In the Big 12, Baylor won it last year. Yeah, they're the 4th odds-on favorite to win the Big 12 this year. So Texas, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State could all have a lot to say about this. There's a very, very viable path to getting a different Big 12 champion. But the SEC is in the way, and the Pac-12 could be in the way, because Utah won the Pac-12 last year, and Utah, along with USC, are co-favorites right now to win the Pac-12. All of these are updated odds from Caesar Sportsbook. So it's Utah, USC, Oregon, kind of a three-way dance near the top there. I put this at a 7. I'm assuming we're going to have many different conference champs, but going 5 for 5 is a little tough, so I gave that a 7. And then this last one is an extremely long shot. Jesse tempted me to put a 10 out of 10 on the boldness scale here. Rand said Auburn's going to have 2 1,000-yard rushers again for the first time since, he said 17, but in reality it's all the way like back in 2013, I think. This is a 9.98 on the boldness scale. This is not going to happen. One of them is a certainty to be a 1,000-yard caliber back. Tank Bigsby, no question about him. If he's durable enough to last the whole season, yeah, he's in that conversation. He was like an 1,100-yard guy last year. So, yes, we've got one, but that's not the chore here. The chore is finding the second one. Jacquez Hunter is a very good back, but just to give you an idea of how far he would still have to go, last year he put up 593 yards total on, 89 carries. Okay, so he was really good on yards per carry average. Jacquez Hunter had 6.8 yards per carry last year. To give you an idea of how much added workload he would need at that yards per carry rate to hit 1,000, he would need another 58 carries to put himself in position to be a 1,000-yard rusher. They also have Damari Alston coming in this year, a true freshman, but one that they figure will insert himself into the mix here. So what I see with Auburn is I see Tank Bigsby being a feature back, and then I see those two guys spelling him, but neither of them is going to even approach the amount of carries that it takes to get close to 1,000 yards. So I say that's like a 9.99 out of 10. That's really close. Also, here's a fun little fact. It's not just an Auburn thing. Out of every single Power 5 team last year, not a single one of them had 2,000-yard rushers. Now, that's noteworthy, but it's also a trend in college football in general. Not a single Power 5 team had 2,000-yard rushers last year. So it's not disrespectful to say I don't think Auburn's going to do it. You could have yourself a nice little prop bet and say maybe no team's going to have a couple of 1,000-yard rushers again. So good, bold predictions there. What do we have? An 8, a 5, a 9, a 7, and a 9.99. That averages out to one of the bold prediction segments that we've had.